What's up, Bitcoin developers? I'm thundersbiscuit. I'm an engineer with the Bitcoin Development Kit team, and today I'll be going over a tutorial with you on how to build a Lightning node using the LDK Node project in Kotlin. So the first thing I want to talk about is, what is LDK Node? LDK Node is a project that came out of the LDK project itself. LDK is a very powerful library where the API is very granular, and it offers you a ton of flexibility and complexity. And LDK Node is basically sort of an opinionated approach to that API. So the LDK Node project gives you a simplified and sort of ready to go API if you're trying to build Lightning nodes in all sorts of places. So one of the good things about it is that it offers language bindings. So you can use LDK Node in Python, in Swift on iOS apps and on desktop, as well as in Kotlin for Android and JVM. Today, that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to use the Kotlin bindings to produce desktop applications. LDK Node project is hosted, the source code is hosted here at lightning-dev-kit/LDK Node. So today, what I'll be building, Pistol Wallet is a JVM application that kind of looks like this. We have a dashboard. The UI is not very well developed, but it has all the functionalities of like an interesting Lightning node. And you'll see how easy it is to get going very quickly. So that's super fun. Compose is very similar to Swift UI as well as React. So if you're familiar with those declarative ways of building user interfaces, this is really what Compose is doing. And Compose was then taken by JetBrains, and they said we can actually render this on much more than just Android devices, of course. And so JetBrains has made a version that works on desktop as well as web. So this is called Compose Multi-Platform, and this is what I'm using here. I'm an Android engineer myself, and so I was able to just use the library that I know very well and use that to create a desktop application. One thing we need to do to get started is to make sure you have a good Lightning setup with Bitcoin daemon as well as some Lightning nodes we can connect to. One of the good ways to do this, if you're not familiar with it, is to use a project called Polar. Polar requires you have Docker installed, and but once you have it, it works very well, and we'll be able to set all of that up. So this is what Polar looks like once you have a network going. Here I have one Bitcoin daemon running on reg test, and 3 nodes. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at this node, and we're going to try to connect to it using an Explorer client. We're going to need Explorer because LDK needs to query an Explorer server for updating its on-chain wallet and monitoring things like channel opens and channel closed. So I have a blog post on my personal blog where you'll find how to set up a whole series of reg test situations, but for me, in this case right now, I want to use the Explorer and Polar setup. We're going to try that. It appears to be working fine. We're going to mine a few blocks, and we should see Explorer picking it up. There you go. Good. So now we have a Bitcoin daemon as well as a node we can connect to. Let's get going. So the first thing I'm going to do is go and clone this repository that I have here, thundersbiscuit/Pistol Wallet. You can clone it, and that will give you access to the repo. So once I get in here, this repository, I'll tell you a little bit about how it's structured. The first part of it is that this Gradle, this build.gradle file defines the configuration for the build, and this is where I declare my dependency on LDK Node JVM. So this is the language bindings for LDK Node on the JVM, and we're using version 0.1.0 right now. From there, in the source directory, you'll find all of the user interface as well as the code for the Lightning node. And the gist of it is that we're using these composable functions. This is defined by the Compose library, and those contain all of the UI. So for example, in my main app here, where the content is declared as this base page, and this base page is one of the screens, and it's the host for the 3 screens we have. Top right, I'm able to fire the app. This is what the app looks like again: channels, dashboard, and Lightning Wallet. Let's take a look at dashboard. I want to show you, without going over everything that is required to build Compose applications in this video, you should know that most Compose buttons are defined with an onClick method. And so this is where we provide code for what happens when the button is clicked. So I have all the buttons that are defined here. This is, for example, the button for start node here. And below is the get balance, and then the get funding address, for example. And these onClick methods is where I'm going to define the logic for what happens when they get clicked. So we're going to go over some of these together. I'm going to fire up the app here again. On my node dashboard, I have one button that is enabled right now, and it's the start node button. So if I look for this start node button, it's here. It's a standard button, and it has this onClick that currently has nothing in it. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to start the node. And for this, I have an object. It's a singleton called LDK Node. Actually, I'm just going to comment this out. So this LDK Node object is defined here under my Lightning package, and it is right now quite empty. It has a bunch of things that are commented out. We're going to work through them over the course of this video. So the first aspect of it is that when I want to access the node property on this singleton object, I'm going to use here. This is if you're familiar with Kotlin, this is like a lazy access. So on the first access, it will call this code for the initialization, and then once it's done, after that, we're just going to return the node itself. So what we're going to do here is build my LDK node. So we're doing that using a node builder, and that's of type builder. And from there, we have a bunch of methods we can call on the builder. So here, I'm going to do node builder dot set storage directory path, and we're going to set it to pistol wallet. Node builder dot set network. We're going to set that to regtest, and then node builder dot set explore server, and I'm going to use http /127.0.0.1 port 3002. LDK node, and we're just going to call the build method on it. So now this is my node, and I will return this node here on line 22. So on first access, we're going to create the node. Thereafter, we'll just have the node available to us. So on the start button for this, we're going to access the node and we're going to start it. And to start, what I'm going to do is do node.start. So whenever I say node here, I'm basically accessing this property on the object. So this will start the node. And once that's done, I want to switch the viewModel property node is live to true. So the next thing I want is a node ID. And this is provided by the method node ID. It's here at the bottom. I think I have it. Yeah. Again, node dot, and then you get all sorts of methods you can use on the LDK node. I'm going to call node ID. So this will return to me a string that I can then display to the user. We're going to start this app. And my status is now online. I have a node ID. Great. And you can see that we have a pistol wallet now. Directory created. We have logs here. I do want to be able to get a funding address. So this will call the new on-chain address on my LDK node object, and that's not defined yet. So my new on-chain address method returns a string, and it's initially when you call new on-chain address on your node, it returns an object of type address. It's a type alias for a string, but we're just going to return it. We have a button for events. So this is part of the design of LDK Node. Whenever things happen to your node, it will emit events, and it is up to you, the user, to basically handle those events. So an LDK node keeps an internal queue of these events, and it basically will let you know that an event has happened, and once it has, it is up to you to handle it. So, and there's a variety of types of events. Once they happen, depending on what they are, you are expected to deal with them accordingly. So for example, persistence or showing to the user things or whatever. And once that's done, you want to let LDK Node know that you've handled the event. So this happens through two methods, next event and event handled. So we're going to define those on the LDK Node. Here, so we're going to define the next event method here. Basically, I'm just trying to show the event to the user at this point. To give an example. So I have a next event, which is a nullable event type, node next event, and we're going to return toString. If the event is null, we're going to return the string no event for now. And finally, we have an event handle method, and that's just going to call the node.event handled in this case. So my dashboard is good to go. I have all my buttons are basically active. So we're going to try to make a payment with this node. The first thing we're going to need to do is open a channel. My channel screen has a list of peers. I can update that, and it has fields for me to enter basically new channel. If I wanted to open a new channel, I'm going to need to enter some information. So these fields are going to capture that. So let's get these working. our current peers. So whenever we update, we press the update button here. I want to update my list of peers. So LDK Node get peers, we're going to define a get peers method on this LDK Node object. And I want, for now, I just want the peers to return, to be a listed as a list of strings. So we're going to map these peer details just to a string, basically, to their node ID. And that's a string. For each peer, we're going to loop over them and print them all with their node ID. And we're going to do the same thing for the get channels method. This one is a bit more complex, so I have it commented out. We're going to go over it here. Right now I'm returning a list of triples. So these triples contain the string that will be the channel ID, and then the outbound capacity and the inbound capacity. By default, LDK gives that to you in millisats, and I want to display it in Satoshis, so I'm dividing that by 1,000. That's all we need for this screen. These fields are basically updating, keeping track of what the user is entering for the pub key, the IP, the port, and the amount. And once we press the open channel button, we're going to call the LDK Node open channel method. Let's fire this app up. See what we get. I'm going to start my node. My node is online. Channels. We can see that I have no peers. Everything seems to be working. So I'm going to get my balance here. So the first here, I have not yet updated the code here. So we're going to get this. We're going to sync the wallet and then get the on-chain balance first. So my get on-chain balance method is going to return a pair of unsigned longs, and that's because I want to be able to split that balance into spendable and pending Satoshis. So I'm returning this pair after calling the two methods, node.spendOnChainBalanceSats and node.totalOnChainBalanceSats. Once I have that, I display this as part of the balance inside the view model. So now that we have all of this set up, I'm going to try to send Satoshis to the node and then open a channel with that balance. So we're going to start the node here, getting a pub key. We have an online status. Everything looks good. I have a balance of 0 and I want to get a funding address. So this will be to fund my on-chain wallet. And when I go to Polar, again, if I click on my Bitcoin D, I can actually send coins to a particular address. We're going to send half a Bitcoin here. This is successful. We're going to mine a few blocks. And when I get my balance here, I can see that the funds are available now. This is awesome. Let's take a look at the channels. So I'm going to try to open a channel with Carol. Carol has an Eclair node. So we're going to go under the Connect tab and copy the PDP external address. It's a whole string that contains the node pub key, the IP, and the port. So I'll break this down into 3 in this case, and we're going to open a channel with Carol for 200,000 Satoshis. I'm going to click Open Channel, and now if I update my current list of peers, she's there. But if you go into the dashboard and you click Next Event, you'll find that, first of all, LDK Node is giving me a channel pending event. So I'm printing it all out here, but the gist of it is that it's a channel pending. So this was the very first event that happened when we opened the channel earlier on. And in this queue of events, as we discussed before, LDK Node is keeping this queue of events, and I basically need to let it know that I have dealt with it, and I've updated my whatever I need to update, and I've told everybody I need to tell about this. We're all good. So once I press dismiss here, this is not actually calling the event handled method. If I click next event, I'm just going to keep the same event. It's going to keep popping up. What I need to do is click on event handle. So this calls the event handled method on the LDK node. And when I do that, now we're going to get to the next event in the queue. So here it's saying, oh, I have no events for now. I can dismiss this. So now that we have all of this set up, we're going to try to make and receive payments. I'm going to start my app. Make sure our node is online. It has a balance. I added a new peer, an LND node in Polar, so Alice. So I now have 2 peers, Alice and Carol. And we're going to try to receive a payment from Alice. So if I click receive payment, it's given me an invoice that I should be able to ask Alice to pay. And there you go. We've successfully paid the invoice. Now, what happens here is that LDK Node will have, we hope, added this event to the queue. And if I do next event, indeed, I find that this payment successful event is what's returned. So even though I dismiss it, again, if I call next event over and over, it's just going to give me this event as long as I don't let LDK Node know that I've handled this event in some way. So that's important, so that LDK Node knows that you've cleaned up your persistence, that everything is good, synced up, good to go. And once you do that, the next event will happen, and it's given me a payment received event, of course. So this is great. I can do next event, and now I'm getting no events. So it's returning null at the moment because we don't have any more events in the queue. The next thing we're going to try to do is pay an invoice. So if I say we're going to go to Alice, and we're going to ask her to create an invoice for 10,000 Satoshis. And I'm going to paste this invoice here in the field, and when I click pay invoice, our next event is now giving me a payment successful. Great. And if I handle that event correctly, now we have no events. So we've managed to receive payments, send payments to our peers. This is fantastic. And all of this with very little code here. Of course, we're not handling anything right now, so most of it is just printed. The logs are shown to the user. So hopefully this is a great way to get started with LDK Node. You can see that the methods on the node are super simple. They give you a clean interface that you can just call to open channels, make payments, fire up the node, make sure everything's in order, and get going fairly quickly. You should know that this Kotlin code is currently working on desktop. I'm using Compose for desktop again, but it would work as well. You can basically copy paste this into an Android app and it would work. And in fact, there is also an iOS version of this tutorial made by Matthew Ramsden. You can check out his video. Super cool. He's using the Swift version of those bindings to create a similar application. All right, happy coding.